Okay. Welcome to the electricity market in India. I'm your host, Sneha Bhardwaj. Today's episode focuses on virtual power purchase agreements or VPPAs. These agreements are gaining attention in India's clean energy landscape. But are they a meaningful tool to push renewable energy or just a financial workaround? To help us understand this better, we are joined by five experienced professionals from the power sector. We have with us Mr. Rajib Roy Choudhary, India Head, Business Development at Candi Solar. He brings 18 years of experience in power trading, renewable energy, and open access. Joining us also is Mr. Rajendra Abhijeet, General Manager, Regulations at Candi Solar. He has worked with Tata Power and StarCraft and now leads regulatory engagement at Candi. From Ampin Energy, we have Mr. Aditya M., Senior Director. He leads the Western region's commercial and industrial business and electricity trading for AMP Energy India. We are also joined by Mr. Himanshu Mishra, a renewable energy strategist with over 18 years of experience across regulatory affairs, strategy, and development. He has worked with ACC Ambuja Cements, Sunsource Energy, Meenakshi Energy, and is currently with Energy Optima Consultant Private Limited. And finally, Mr. Abhisek Pandey, Head Regulatory and Policy Advocacy for Distributed Energy at Reliance Industries Limited. He works at the intersection of policy and business for the evolving clean energy market. Thank you all for being here. So, to begin, I would like to ask Mr. Rajiv, can you start us off with the basics? Like, what exactly is a virtual power purchase agreement and how is it different from a physical power purchase agreement?
Yeah, thanks, Sneha, and thanks everyone for joining today. And VPPA is a very hot topic in the power market as we speak because of the new policy guidelines which has come. For layman terms, what we know about VPPA, it's a virtual power purchase agreement, and the name, as it suggests itself, it's virtual. So it's not the real physical flow of power which takes place. So in a conventional power purchase agreement, you have a generator which generates the electricity, whether it's a renewable or non-renewable, whatever. And then you have a off-taker, which is let's say, for example, a CNI consumer, commercial and industrial consumer, which off-takes the electricity. So both of them agree on certain commercial terms, and based on the present regulatory framework of the state and the center, they enter into a long-term or a medium-term power purchase agreement, or could be a short-term. And based on those terms, the physical flow of power actually takes place from the generator, which generates the power, and the off-taker, which consumes the power. Now, what happens in a virtual power purchase agreement is basically we take reference of the exchange. For example, in India, it's power exchange. And we use the market clearing price as a reference point. And both the consumer and the off-taker agrees on a strike price, which is a negotiated number, could be anything. And they enter into a commercial arrangement between both of them that if the strike price is, if the market clearing price is more than the strike price, then the advantage will be given to the off-taker. And if it is less than the strike price, then basically the off-taker will compensate the generator for the loss what he might be making by selling it into the exchange. So exchange is the reference point based on which these agreements are basically signed between the off-taker and the consumer. Also, we also need to understand that in these agreements, the losses and the charges for the losses is generally borne by the off-taker, and based on those commercial terms, the strike price is agreed upon. So it's basically a hedge instrument where you make sure that your uncertainty and the volatility of the merchant market is being catered through these kind of agreements.
Okay, thank you so much for explaining us, Mr. Roy. Now over to you, Mr. Pandey. What is your take on CERC proposed VPPA guidelines at this stage of India's energy transition? What would you say about that?
Yeah, Sneha, thanks for the question. But before I deep dive into it, a small note on that. That though I'm coming from Reliance, but whatever we are discussing over here is the personal views. I'm not uh, representing the of the RIL's position over here, right? So
Okay.
now coming to your question on why CRC has come up with at this stage. So effectively, we have seen over the years, CRC has been taking the very progressive steps. The hint is in the document itself. If we go through that, we have seen that the ministry has identified and instructed them to go for this particular kind of product. Why? Because the stakeholders who have been asking for these kind of products have been giving feedback to the CRC as well as ministry, and now CRC on its own went ahead and talked to the SEBI where there was some kind of dispute regarding the jurisdiction of this. And as soon as this gets over, on its own, CRC has come up with these guidelines. So, and currently, VPPA as a product is the natural evolution of whatever we have seen over the years. You know, the plain vanilla solar, then solar plus battery and all. Now this VPPA, and going forward, we may look and we may find that CRC might come up with some products which will facilitate the derivative products also through the SEBI. So there is an interaction between the regulators, and this is an outcome of long drawn engagement with the stakeholders. So timing is perfectly right on this thing.
Okay. Mr. Malpani, from a compliance perspective, how do VPPAs help designated consumers meet their renewable energy consumption obligations?
So basically, look, fundamentally, need of the VPPA is coming from the fact that current regulatory frame. Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Current regulatory framework won't allow 100% replacement of green electricity for any designated consumer, right? Most of the states have one form or another restriction, like Maharashtra resultant load flow, right? Gujarat, while has relaxed, there is no CD limit. They have put up a limit on the banking that 30 more than 30% banking cannot happen. Various states have their own limitations, so therefore most of the open access consumers are able to replace approximately 50 to 70% of electricity. But how do they become 100% green? So whatever is remaining, the 30%, right? That residual, that energy they support in generation of that electricity and claim the renewable energy certificate generated out of that energy to support their sustainability claim. So let's say there is a consumer in Maharashtra, 100 he is consuming 100 units. Total, he has signed an open access agreement to replace 70 units. For 30 units, he signs a VPPA for a project to be set up in Rajasthan, which will be selling electricity in the exchange. Right now, whatever the IREX are generated or as per CRC regulation, REC is generated are being passed on to these RPO customer or this sustainability off taker.
Okay.
Now, how the difference, how the developer, what is the in it for the developers, right? For a project to get financed, we need long-term certainty of cash flows. So sustainability off-taker provides us a backstop at a certain price, what Rajib has mentioned, a strike price, right? Which enables for us to raise the debt, 70, which service the debt and return on equity. So therefore, these RECs, the renewable energy certificates, are the most critical component of these VPPAs, right? And which is ultimately the deliverable for these contract to the sustainability object.
Okay. So I would like to ask Mr. Mishra if he could take us through the mechanics. I mean, what is the flow of money, electricity, and RECs in a typical VPPA transaction?
I have to take it through with an example. Suppose a generating station, and I am a consumer, say ABC consumer. Uh, I'm sitting in say West Bengal, which is where the state which is dead in terms of open access. So I have obligation. I'm a data center. I have obligation until unless I don't meet the RE obligation, RE quotient. None of the data center people will come to me. So what should I do? The first option is with me if I agree the land within my myself and set up a behind the meter plant to meet up my obligation, which is not possible to meet up entire consumption of it. That's a one way. The another way is obviously that open access. Offsite open access is no longer applicable practically by law, by regulation. It is there, but it is not practically operational in West Bengal. So what option I have? I have an option of meeting through renewable attributes. Renewable attributes are already prevalent REC. You can REC is a recognized instrument to meet the RPO obligation, but it is mandatory for RPO obligated entities. Am I audible?
Yeah, now.
Hello.
Yes, you are now, sir.
Okay. So there's okay. So I have obligation. I can meet up through REC. But what if I am not obligated at all? So I can meet up. Even then, I can meet up to REC. But that REC I cannot use it to comply my requirement because there is no compliance mechanism for non-obligated entities. Right. So this VPPA provides a framework which is recognized that whatever REC I will take it, I will consider as obligation of mine, consider as for compliance of my RE obligations. This RE obligation will be defined now as a renewable consumption obligation going forward. I guess I lost the connection again.
Yeah. So, Mr. Abhijeet, sir, are you speaking? Actually, there's. Okay.
Himanshu bhai, can you mute if it's possible? Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah. Who? Now we're moving forward to Mr. Abhijeet. If you could tell us, so many of our listeners ask about physical versus financial elements. So how is the legitimacy of RECs ensured when there is no direct power delivery? Also, how are RECs issued and transferred in a VPPA, and can they be traded?
So that's a very good question, Sneha. For REC mechanism, we should first understand that it's not a physical delivery mechanism. Even the current REC mechanism, the physical delivery of power happens separately. RECs are generated and sold separately. There is no linkage between physical delivery of power. So how do we actually maintain the legitimacy of these RECs? So the legitimacy of these RECs are ensured through two critical steps. One, you have to meter the generation properly, meaning the RECs which are issued should be issued only for actual generation, and actual generation should be metered. And this metering, this verification right now is being done by a state level agency and a central level agency. Both of them do, depending on your connectivity and other things. Second important step to ensure legitimacy is to have a central registry where each REC which is generated is logged and each REC which is used is extinguished. So right now, NLDC maintains such a registry. Under VPPA, in the current guideline, the Commission has said that once the RECs are generated, they will be transferred to the buyer of power, basically, the buyer in the contract. And then the buyer will inform the central registry where they will be extinguished. If all these things happen as they are supposed to happen, then REC's legitimacy is established. The green claim stands. Right? So the delivery of power may not be to the consumer because the VPPA structure is designed in such a manner, but because he's paying for that power delivery, power generated, he is entitled to get RECs for that. So this is how the legitimacy is assured. This is how RECs are generated in a VPP agreement. The generator basically has to register itself under REC mechanism, and then RECs will be generated. These RECs which are generated cannot be traded. Under VPPA arrangement, if a plant is registered, the RECs has to go to the buyer of the buyer with whom the agreement has been signed. It cannot be traded. Now, how to ensure this? How to ensure that all these provisions are being complied to? The framework will, I think, evolve in future. So that's all for this.
Thank you, Mr. Abhijeet. Now, Mr. Pandey, continuing from a market design angle, what role does the power exchange play in VPPA transactions?
Right. So if we look at the document, the price discovery of the physical power which would be generated from the particular project has two aspects. Either power could be sold on power exchange or it could be sold onto the open market. Now, if we talk about the benefit of the power exchange being a platform wherein the price discovery is more fair and transparent, is a better mechanism for getting the reference price, which at which this VPPA would have to be settled. So if you have a strike price of, let's suppose, 3 rupees, and if you go and do a over-the-counter trade at 3 rupees 50 paisa, 2 rupees 50 paisa, whatever it is, on a bilateral basis, then there would always be some question mark. But if the similar transaction happen through power exchange, that will give a legitimacy in terms of the transparency, in terms of the fairness of the transaction which is happening. So power exchange role over there would be to give a reference point with which this would be settled at a transparent in a transparent manner. Number one. Number two, the second role which obviously the power exchange will play into the trading or the transfer of the RECs which are being generated, right? So the Abhijeet has given in detail that how the RECs would be transferred from the project to the consumer, but the role of power exchange as a facilitator for REC transaction is well established. So power exchange will play their role in that. In that, specifically, we talk about, let's suppose, for a dedicated project which is coming up for VPPA only, and as a consumer, as a sustainability consumer, power exchange gives me a kind of comfort that the power is being sold on a particular platform. We on a day-to-day basis will be getting the obligation sheet. Then we'll have a clear-cut picture that how much energy has been sold on power exchange, correspondingly how much RECs would be generated, and in terms of the reporting perspective also, power exchange will give a common platform, single unified platform, where I can see that how much energy has been sold and how much is to be settled, and for how much energy I am supposed to get RECs. So unified way, power exchanges can come up with some unified product around this and facilitate the future transaction over here. Right?
Just to add, Abhisek,
Yeah.
Sneha, what the power exchange is doing is providing the liquidity for these transactions. It ensures there is a deep liquid power market, so power will be dispatched. So only concern is the price, right? Volumes is not a concern. Almost 10 to 15 gigawatt is being traded every day on power exchanges, right? So it's not so for us to sell the electricity in Indian electricity market, grid is large enough to absorb at least 2 to 5 gigawatt of VPPAs, which might come over the period of next 2 to 3 years. Right, that is the most important thing. How do you liquidate the power, right? Because that's a responsibility of sustainability of taker. That's what developer is bringing on the table.
Yeah, thank you for your insights. Now, Mr. Mishra, if you could answer that, in states where open access is limited, how do VPPAs offer a practical compliance route for CNI consumers?
See, like I was mentioning, I started with the very basic state, which is dead for open access, West Bengal. I don't foresee any major changes with respect to VPPA guidelines enabling consumers to comply with RPO or renewable energy obligation there. Even today they can do so. If they want to purchase REC, they purchase REC. They can purchase. They are obligated entity. They can do so. The VPPA guidelines in terms of physical delivery. Again, I'm dead. Again, internet is the issue. Anyway,
No, we can hear you.
We can hear you. We can hear you.
I don't foresee any major change in encouraging open access per se in those states because of this VPPA guideline. Okay, so I don't foresee much major change in those states just only because VPPA guidelines has been issued that they will be open up with open access because the physical delivery is the constraint. And anyway, this VPPA contract is a non-transferable service contract. So I don't think in any financial derivatives or financial innovation will be coming up. It is a specific delivery contract wherein buyer and seller have to commit.
So just to add on
for physical delivery of it. So that's it. You are a seller. I'm a buyer. You will sell. You will generate. I will guarantee you for a guaranteed price, which is linked with the transparent price recovery mechanism, which could be OTC contract, which could be bilateral contract. Issue internet.
So just to add on, Sneha, here, like we have a lot of scenarios where we have consumers who, especially the green energy open access consumers, where they're smaller in size, they don't have the ABT meters in place, and the cost of putting infrastructure of open access is quite huge for those small consumers. And under those circumstances, this VPPA can be a route where we don't need the physical infrastructure to be in, but you can have a commercial settlement just to make sure that you follow the RPO obligations or you keep the RECs with you. So there are many small industries, small institutes which have an obligation from their suppliers or their parent organization that they need to move from a certain part of percentage of their power procurement or energy procurement has to be through renewable power. And for them, this market will open up. And what Mr. Aditya also said is that since in Indian market, third-party PPAs were not getting funded through the banks or through the debtors, they didn't see these agreements as a long-term cash flow tools. So VPPA will enable this entire market to come in, and the exchange and the short-term market is pretty huge to absorb this liquidity. And the best part is now you can have 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 gigawatt of third-party merchant power plants come up with a secured funding from the banks. So these are the additional advantage which will come.
Okay, so now taking forward, Mr. Malpani, if from a decision-making point of view, you can tell us that how should a consumer evaluate whether to sign a VPPA or buy RECs directly?
Sneha, buying RECs is a cost implications, right? That model was always there. You can always purchase RECs or green power from the discoms to meet and become 100% sustainable, to meet 100% sustainability requirements. Right, but already you are paying huge green grid tariff, and then over and above you need to bear this cost. What these VPPAs will essentially provide consumers, sustainability off-takers, a mechanism to mitigate that cost by taking the advantage of arbitrage between lower cost of renewable energy versus the thermal power on which the grid operates. Right, so it depends on the answer to your question. It depends on the risk appetite of sustainability off-taker. Like globally, most of the sustainability off-takers, you take the big names like AWS, Google, Microsoft, all these people, they have been taking 100. They are basically promising 100% of strike price. When they agree, then 100% of the strike price risk is is borne by them, right? So let's say if the strike price is 3.2 rupees in the VPPA, any upside is being transferred to them, and anything which is lower, they will support the shortfall. There is also a mechanism where we can basically reduce the contingency risk for these susceptibility off takers by having collar on both sides, let's say 50 paisa both sides. So any risk beyond 50 paisa, higher or lower, will be borne by the developers. Those options are available. That depends on the risk appetite of the susceptibility off takers. So both gains and the losses will be accordingly determined for them. Right. So let's say tomorrow at the time of Diwali, when the prices generally go high, 7-8 rupees, the 3.2 rupees minus 8 rupees is what going to be the gain. Whereas in the lean seasons, right, when there is a high lower demand, right, the prices may go right. Like in the solar right now, the prices are about 1.5 to 2 rupees in some of the 15-minute blocks. So that risk can be shared between generator and sustainability off taker. Right. It depends on the risk appetite of both the parties.
Okay,
Right.
thank you for explaining that. So now, Mr. Pandey, shifting to the generator's perspective, what are the financial and operational advantages of entering into a VPPA?
So, from a generator's perspective, if we talk about the financial benefits, first, I guess Aditya has already covered that as a generator, you would want your project to get a financial closure from the debtor. So that is before the project is executed. Another benefit is the cash flow management. Half of the companies which we look at from our industry or any other industry, they go broke if the cash flow management is not done properly. But this VPPA, these kind of products, when the power is sold on power exchange, will ensure the cash flow on a regular basis, on a day-to-day basis. So this takes away the risk of the cash flow and cash flow mismanagement, and it in a way enables the generators and developers to go for this. It will help them on that aspect of the financial management. Coming to the operational one, VPPA by nature, obviously, you don't have to set up a plant where the consumer is located. So if the consumer and their load is spread across India at different locations, you can simply accumulate and set up a single large plant, which is more feasible, more engineering side feasible as well as economically feasible, and then we can have economies of scale, right? So as a generator, as a developer, I would rather be happy running a 200 or 300 megawatt of plant somewhere in western region rather than running 10 or 20 smaller 5 megawatt, 10 megawatt plants, right? So it becomes operationally easy for me to run and serve the need of the customer. So operationally, I'll say that VPPA would solve a lot of problem for a developer on that front, right? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you for that. Mr. Mishra, if we know that every commercial arrangement has its risk, so what risks does a consumer and generator face in VPPAs?
Price volatility risk, until unless you are not safeguarding yourself in contractually. Price volatility risk in terms of guaranteed price or differential to be paid either to buyer or seller is a big risk. The another big risk is curtailment. Indian grid system is not that much robust enough, which does not pose a risk of curtailment. What will happen in terms of curtailment if the generating company sitting in Rajasthan is curtailed? What kind of how if they are not able, they will not be able to sell it, right? Even though there is a electricity promotion of must-run renewable energy plant as a must-run plant, MOPA must-run rules 2021 is there, but it guarantees only and only with the plant is dispatchable, right? And again, it shares, it provides a mechanism wherein if you are able to share it, if you are able to dispatch it, you can sell it to market, and whatever market realization and your tariff agreement is, that differential will be borne by the DISCOM, it has a deemed to purchase or something like that. Will it be applicable for these C&I consumer? No, because the guideline does not say so. Another risk will be in terms of variability, grid variability risk. In terms of renewable forecasting risk and generation risk. What if you have guaranteed See, just to give you an example, suppose you are a generator, I am a buyer, you have contracted me that I will be selling electricity, say 10, 15 lakh per megawatt per year, per month, something like that. And because of some variations in climate and all, you have not been able to generate that much. Should I, if it contract does not cover, as a buyer, I have to compensate you for the mutually agreed generation, right? Estimated generation. How that risk will be shared, how the risk will be optimized between the parties. So these are the litigations. These are the litigation I foresee that can come up if the contract is not safeguarded suitably. And if you see this CRC guideline, to me, it just gives a validation to the virtual power purchase agreement. Does not do anything more than that. It does not provide any redressal mechanism. Dispute resolution mechanism is not there. It does not provide any mechanism how the strike price or whatever has to be guaranteed. It has safely isolated itself from even terming the financial derivatives, swaps, contract for difference. It has not mentioned anything because they don't want to get into the jurisdiction of that has led this much delay in terms of recognition of VPPA. So for me, VPPA, as per the guidelines, can happen. Even it is happening. CleanMax has already sold its power through VPPA through a trader, right? And believe me, this mechanism is not new. I have seen contract in 2009 wherein thermal contract were designed like that with a trader. So whatever is the efficiency gain, I had a contract with a trading company which said that if the trader is able to get you a contract, 3.5 rupees per paisa is 350 rupees per unit is my agreed price, because that ensures my lender's compliance to be met, financial covenant to be met. Whatever is the price over and above 3.5 and 5.5, there are two bands and out of it. 3.5, if the price is above 3.5, I will share 20% of efficiency gain. They call it as efficiency gain. And if the price is 55 above 5.5, the price will be 80, efficiency gain will be 80-20. So that kind of mechanism was always there. Indians are quite smart. So it is not something that they are hooked up with the terminology. They are already in practice. VPPA can be designed within existing framework itself. There is no need to even define the strike price or contract for difference terminology to complicate it in terms of financial derivative. Even the present CRC derivative, CRC guidelines, they have not done so. They have not got into a territory of what US or Europe, for example, in US, Frank-Dodd Act specifically provides how the treatment of higher price accounting will be happening, how the service two-side profitability or loss margins will be addressed, and how this contract will be tradable, financially tradable to other party. In India, it is not. It is very much clear in explicit terms that it is non-transferable service contract. So to me, VPPA is not something, it's just a recognition of CRC has just recognized VPPA in a whole broader context, because whatever international consumers are looking for in terms of VPPA, just let's recognize it. Otherwise, REC mechanism is already there. Efficiency sharing mechanism is already there. But Rajib has rightly mentioned, financial institutions do not recognize such kind of mechanisms. So generating company, if a generating company want to get into this kind of contract, that company can get financing now very easily because CRC has recognized it. So otherwise, VPPA for me was already there. The mechanism which CRC has laid down, that can easily be done in India within existing framework even.
Okay. Coming back to Mr. Malpani, like looking at the corporate side, are there any tax, accounting, or disclosure implications for companies entering VPPAs?
No, person, it's not. So look, so any incomes arising out of the VPPA is like a financial income arising from the proprietary investments happening into the markets, right? So that will be taxed accordingly. right? Any gains or any losses as such. So we don't see any direct cost implications or specific disclosure requirements, but these things will eventually evolve, right? No, market is at the nascent stage. A lot of developers, consumers would like to understand how these VPPAs are being disclosed in Europe to or US to meet the accessibility of takers, and those things will be accordingly addressed as we move forward.
Okay. Now, over to Mr. Abhijeet. The draft guidelines mention trader and OTC platform roles. How will traders and over-the-counter platforms participate in VPPA market under the draft framework?
That's a very good question, Sneha. And I think that traders and OTC platforms have a very important role to play if VPPAs has to take off in a big way. So, of course, traders act as a market makers. They can, bring sellers and buyers who are interested in entering into such contracts together. They can manage pricing, how strike price should be evolved, how REC allocation will happen. They can sometime take the payment risk also. But the most important way in which traders can operate is by being aggregator, by playing the role of an aggregator. So, for example, there are multiple small consumers of, say, 200 kilowatt size, which can individually, even though they're allowed to participate in green energy open access, but the legal cost, the technical cost, the operational cost for entering into such a contract may be higher for them. So traders can, of course, aggregate such small consumers, act on their behalf, and enter into a VPP agreement with a generator. Now, whether this is possible right now under CRC framework is a matter of debate. As Himanshu rightly pointed out, the guidelines just say that let there be a virtual power purchase agreement. Rest, it is silent. It has been left. Everything has been left to sellers and buyers. So traders, of course, has a very important role to play. They can negotiate such contracts. They can popularize these concepts in a much faster way. Yeah.
Okay, so building on that, Mr. Abhijeet, how's the jurisdiction over VPPAs divided between CERC and other bodies like SEBI, would you say?
Yeah. So what has happened is, VPPAs have been in discussion for a long period of time. This is not something new which has come. So as per my knowledge also, and Himanshu has also said that way back in 2008, 2009, VPPAs were being discussed. So why this was not coming till date was there was a conflict of jurisdiction between SEBI and CRC. But now in the draft guidelines, CRC has clarified that SEBI has given this input that because VPPAs are non-transferable specific delivery contracts, they are not financial derivatives. So things, at least as far as the power market regulations are concerned, are much clearer now. VPPAs will be regulated by CRC. SEBI has no role to play. And this brings clarity for both corporate consumers and generators.
And finally, from your side, what changes or clarifications are still needed in the VPPA draft guidelines before finalization?
Yeah, so I agree with Himanshu. I'm not able to understand why these guidelines have been issued. So what they have said in the guideline is that there should be, they have just defined a virtual power purchase agreement. This is the definition. So maybe going forward, more clarity will evolve. But three things which I think the clarification should come is, of course, we operate multiple power exchanges in India. Now, Abhisek was rightly pointing out earlier that power exchange price will form the basis of strike price. So if the multiple exchanges discover prices in different ways, maybe CRC should look at having doing a market coupling sort of thing where only one price is discovered and that price discovery forms the basis of strike price. Second thing is that right now the guidelines say that the generator will transfer the RECs generated to the buyer, and buyer will inform this to the to central agency NLDC, and NLDC will extinguish the RECs. So all this is a very I don't know how this will happen. This looks like a manual process, and there can be apprehensions cast on what RECs are being transferred actually. Are these RECs generated from the VPPA project, or they have been, the buyer is, the consumer is buying it from some other source? What if the RECs are not transferred to buyer by the generator? So all this process needs to be defined, the transfer process, the extinguishment process, which will ensure legitimacy of these RECs. So RECs generated from VPPA, the tagging mechanism should also be developed. They should tag it, they should define it, they should tag it properly that this has been generated against this project, and that is why it is being used by this consumer. And third thing is, we have been discussing about VPPAs will help in additionality. So, but the REC, these guidelines, they nowhere, restricts consumers to sign VPPA only if the additionality thing is in picture. Even the existing projects can go ahead and sign VPPAs. So this thing may be clarified by the regulator. Otherwise, this issue of greenwashing will rear its head. And also, instead of publishing these guidelines, maybe CERC would have simply made amendments in the power market regulations where they would have identified this kind of contracts also. So yeah, these would be some of the clarifications which would come in the near future.
Adding to what Abhijeet was saying onto that, sorry, I just wanted to mention something.
No, that's
these particular guidelines CERC came up with because we as a stakeholder, the sector went ahead and asked for, we want some clarity around this. As a sector, we have been regulated for quite a long time, and we have become accustomed to being regulated, right? That's why we went ahead. Rightly said by Himanshu, there was actually no requirement of the so-called guidelines, but having those that does not, affect us negatively. This gives us a clarity, but there was no requirement as such. We went ahead and we asked for it, and that's why we have got it.
And I
So
also
most of this,
know of, and I also know many such contracts where this upside sharing, downside sharing was already in picture. I mean, this and way back in 2009, 2010, I've seen contracts where traders have guaranteed a fixed price to a generator, and they're free to sell that power in any manner
These are the contracts between two parties. Those should be allowed freely, not to link with any of the technology. Tomorrow, something others comes up wherein we would want that particular technology to be supported through this kind of a structure. The way VPPA is designed should be allowed. Why to restrict it with only RECs and RE power only? Right? So we should be given free hand rather than being over regulated. That's my view on it. Anyway, over to you.
Maybe IREC should also be allowed, probably, because right now they are saying that VPPAs can be signed by generators who registered under RECs. So maybe if somebody registers under IREC and wants to sign such an agreement, maybe they should also be allowed.
Yeah, Mr. Mishra, you have something to add?
Yeah, just to add on, these guidelines are just on demand of the stakeholders to give a validation to VPPA, so that the bankers are satisfied enough that CERC has come up with the regulation or guideline which recognize VPPA plants. So let's fund it. So I truly acknowledge this fact that Rajib has correctly mentioned that present financial system do not recognize VPPA project or REC project as financially viable project. So now if CERC comes with a guideline taking recognition, giving recognition to that kind of plant, that can be easy for financing of it. And if Abhisek has rightly mentioned, it is immaterial whether what kind of technology is going behind it. It could be thermal also, right? It could be thermal. What is stopping us? Nothing is stopping us, right? It could be CFD, it could be geothermal. In UK, Abhisek, if you look at these offshore plants are being funded through contract for difference based project, right? wherein government guarantees a strike price, and they are inviting auctions to bid, let developers bid for these projects based on auction price. And what these developers are doing, they are not restricting it to for their own consumption, generation and consumption by the government. They are using it for financial derivatives. They are actually hedging it further, which is not a case in India. Whatever VPPA recognition is happening today, this is non-serviceable contract. There, the contract is financially serviceable or transferable, and that goes into swaps and contract for difference category, which is not recognized in present framework in India till date. But let's see, we have come so far, giving recognition of non-transferable service contract even were not allowed by SEBI earlier. Now they have acknowledged it, accepted it. Okay, this is your territory, you can do that. Maybe they will also come up with some push by the stakeholder. They can come up with the regulatory framework, implementation guidelines like what US have under the Frank-Dodd Act, or Europe have under the ESC guidelines, ESC framework, to come up with framework how this can be transferable service contract, how this can be financially a transferable contract, or financial derivative innovation can happen accordingly. So it's a long battle. Nothing happens in a day. So I think it's a good start, taking recognition of VPP at least. Thanks.
Yeah, so this is, I think, some of the lessons, as you mentioned, VPPA models can take from US and EU. But moving forward, Mr. Pandey, a critical question to close on, and as Mr. Abhijeet also mentioned something about greenwashing, and there is a concern of VPP if it is just for greenwashing. So how do you ensure that these contracts actually drive new renewable projects?
So, coming to greenwashing, first of all, we need to understand this terminology has been freely used by a number of people, but what exactly is the greenwashing? Greenwashing is nothing but where the RE component or the green component is accounted or claimed by more than one party, right? That's the greenwashing. Otherwise, it will not be greenwashing. So, if by contract or by design, if we are able to make sure that the green component is accounted only once, then the greenwashing related concerns would be addressed. And I guess REC mechanism, the way it is designed as of now, is robust enough to ensure that the greenwashing does not happen. You sell your power as a conventional power, you get the RECs for whatever power you have sold, and then you transfer them accordingly and you extinguish them. So that process, that loop closure happens perfectly fine. Now, another question aspect which you said, that new project, yes, there would be some concerns, but it is up to the